WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisCI to 44321.
Ruth Caves of Wild Rose is the Democratic candidate for the 57th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Ruth Caves, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you.
Thank you for participating in our candidate interview. I'll start by asking you, what's your campaign's key message? Why are you running for this office?
I'm very concerned with the will of the people. I feel like we hear data on, so many people want fair maps, so many people want abortion rights or whatever, and I feel like, is our legislature addressing that? I feel like when you're serving the public, you should actually vote the way your constituents prefer.
If you're elected, what's an example of a bill that would be a priority for you?
Number one on my list as a retired teacher would be the repeal of Act 10. I feel it had a devastating effect on education. Veteran teachers left in droves. People stopped being in the union because there was no more collective bargaining. They were paying fees just to be in the union. And it's not just education. Firefighters, maybe not so much, because we have a volunteer fire department where I live and in many areas. And they are wonderful people. But we do have paid people such as law enforcement and prison workers who were affected by Act 10 because they lost their retirement benefits, or their retirement benefits were impinged upon. So that affects the recruitment of new workers. One of them said to me one day, with the stress of my job, I don't know how long I'm going to live. And I just don't think this is working for me, and I can't even get somebody to take an extra shift. So there's a lot of stress involved.
So if you're elected, you will be entering the legislature during a biennial budget year, and the state's projected to have more than a $3 billion surplus. What are your top two priorities for use of that surplus funding?
Number one, education. Definitely our price supports or our shared revenue is not keeping up with inflation. And definitely, Act 10 is going to be coming in, hopefully, again, and teachers need to be paid more. So that's going to be a huge cost. We also need money for mental health support and safety in our schools.
You mentioned spending priorities. What about tax reform, tax cuts? Is that part of your platform?
Well, I think it's ridiculous that we have a $3 billion budget when that money could now be going to child care, education, cleaning up our water. I don't think we should be sitting on that money when people have needs. And I don't think the common family, the everyday working family, should have to pay more taxes. If you do make over $400,000 combined income, I do agree with the Democratic Party platform that you may have to pay a little more.
You mentioned education as a priority for you. It's also a leading issue for many voters. What do you think is working well in education and what needs to change?
I think we have a great workforce. We have great curriculum in Wisconsin. We have a great system. But I do think we need to be recruiting more highly qualified teachers, and teachers need to be supported by the administration and the families. So it's not just a legislative thing, it's a community involvement.
What about higher education, the state system of four-year colleges, two-year colleges, technical colleges? What does that future look like to you, and where should the legislature be focusing?
I feel our state is lagging behind our neighboring states, I know we are, in funding for higher education. We need to be leaders like we were in the past. Our Board of Regents is doing a great job, and they have a lot of responsibility, not just with their classes at the university and research, but in their outreach. We actually have an Ag Outreach Center in, I can't remember where it is now, Adams County, sorry.
And that's working well for the region?
It does a lot for the region, and it's a research facility. So that's great. But I do feel that all of our colleges need to be supported. We are seeing fewer kids going into college now, and maybe there is a need to reorganize to meet that lesser need. When I worked in the high school, we had the School to Work initiative, and at that time, 42% of students who were going into their freshman year of college failed to graduate for various reasons over the course of what would be their college years. Maybe we do need to be thinking better on which kids should be going to college, what are their goals.
What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how would you propose to address it?
From my perspective where I live, I see it as the immigrants who are coming into our country and holding up so many jobs that are necessary for our community. I think they need more respect, and I think they need some assurance that they're not going to be dragged out of the country overnight. There is a lot of fear in our migrant areas, or not migrant, but Hispanic areas of my area. So I do feel like we need more support for them, and I feel like we need to value all of our workers. I am very pro-union. I feel like the union was such a godsend to my school when I was a union member, and I feel that all jobs rise when union people get better wages, better working conditions, and I think we need to really focus on that.
Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. This also provides an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
Definitely. We've had stores come into our area that came in with their own crew, built the store, and local people get very upset about that. And it happens all over with restaurants and other entities. I do think the locals should have the first chance. Sometimes there's some confusion with unions, but I think those need to be mitigated.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue, and what do you think should be done about it?
Yes, and I think it's in many areas besides the construction industry. They may think of themselves as freelancers, but they really are a small business, and they may need some support as a small business. Otherwise, if they are misclassified, the union might solve those problems.
Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some support government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability? Is it rent control or building more rentals or some other solution?
Well, it is a major issue throughout our state and throughout our nation without any discussion. Corporate landlords pose a huge problem for renters because they are buying up houses and then they can set their rent. So for those, we could look at the rent control. I do think building more units is imperative. Where I live, many people are going into the building trades, but they are building huge houses on the lakes and in the woods in these pastoral areas that would be untouchable by most people. We really need to find some ways to incentivize builders building affordable housing.
2, medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
It's a big question and one that is not answered easily. I do think the reimbursements are going to have to go up. It's not sustainable. Another wing of that problem is the insurance companies are dictating care. Medicine is highly regulated. Hospital care is highly regulated. But the insurance companies are dictating who gets what prescription, when you get your services. Pre-authorization alone can take a long time. So I think we really need to look at the role of the insurance company and how much money they're making off the whole system.
What about mental health care? What are you hearing about mental health in your district, and what are some solutions?
It's a big problem everywhere, including students and farmers. Farmers are a big factor in the mental health awareness issue. We really need to have more support for mental health. We need to destigmatize it. And the schools really need to step up their role, because kids are growing up with these issues. How can they be learning when they have issues just understanding the lesson, focusing on the lesson?
So schools need more resources
I
for
do
mental
think they
health?
need more resources.
How should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion?
This is a very important issue to me. I am not pro-abortion, but I do believe that women should have the right to make decisions about their own bodies. There is no way the government should be telling women what they can do and when with their body. And it just breaks my heart that these women are pregnant and every day they have to worry, what if something goes wrong? Can I get health care? Will I lose my baby when maybe something could be done for me, but the doctor was afraid to deal with me? Will I bleed out in a parking lot? Will I have some injuries to my body associated with this pregnancy that went wrong, so I will never be able to have a baby again? It's not fair. And many women get their primary health care from OBGYNs, who are now leaving states that have abortion bans. So it's a far-reaching, very serious issue. And I think it's just a political football.
Do you
that
support
should never
any
have been raised.
weak limits on abortion?
No.
What about transportation? What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs are addressed, and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce?
Definitely a major issue in our area. We need good roads because we have so much agriculture with heavy trucks that use the roads. We also have situations where people get stranded if they're taken to care in another city and they have no way to get home. So we have many issues just getting care, getting the food we need. Some people have no car. They have to rely on others just to get essential items.
What about the environment? PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how would you propose to address it?
Definitely, our legislature needs to move forward and implement the action they had already to remove PFAS that was stalled by the Assembly. That money was not released. We need to commit to clean water. I am a member of the Sierra Club, and if we don't save the planet, what are we doing? We have to do this.
We're down to our final two questions. I'd like to ask you, how do you describe the leading differences between you and your opponents? You have two opponents.
Correct. So the incumbent is a Republican. He's a very nice man. Unfortunately, he votes with Robin Voss and that cohort consistently. People are very frustrated with that. They want someone who listens to their issues and will work with them and vote the will of the people in the 57th district. My other opponent is younger. He is an independent. He, I'm sure, has a lot of good ideas. I'm not sure what they are, but he is running on a platform of people versus party, which I get. I think there's a lot of division in our communities, in our world, and it would be good to move past that. However, what is the plan? That I'm not sure of.
Well, speaking of division, your final question, if you're elected this fall and you get a magic wand that you can use in the state capitol to resolve one issue in a way that brings all parties, all people together, what is that issue?
Election reform. I am very frustrated with the way people perceive our elections, with the campaigning. I think we need to really look at how we're doing it and put some changes in so everybody has equal access to the ballot and we can feel good about the people we elect.
All right. Thank you, Ruth Caves of Wild Rose, the Democratic candidate for the 57th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Ruth Caves, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you so much.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.